This is a test of the emergency broadcast system.
5. Check for sound. 4.
It's showtime.
3.
Let's go.
1.
You're listening to the Pro Audio Suite, a program for audio and voiceover professionals. And welcome to another Pro Audio Suite. This week we're talking with Eric Bazilian. You would know him from the band The Hooters and also the guy who penned the song One of Us, which became a mega hit for Joan Osborne. That's later in the show. But for now, we're all here. We've got Robbo.
Hello.
We've got Robert. And we have George. And myself.
Hi.
Hello.
Who's myself? I haven't met him.
Oh, yeah, that's my pseudonym. I just don't want to be, because I've got threatened last week, nail gunned the tyres, killed the dog, threatened my children, so I'm going to be myself from now on and move.
Nice.
So I've moved to a new suburb.
Is that how you actually lost your tire?
No, there was actually a nail in my tyre, which was really annoying because when I turned up at the tyre repair place, the guy goes, mate, you got a second? I just want to show you something. The nail's a bit close to the edge and I can't get the grinder in there to smooth it out to put the patch on. And I said, well, can't you put one of those plugs in? They normally put a rubber plug thing. No, you can't put them that close to the edge. And it still seems to be leaking. It's bubbling. I'm like,
I'm in the exact same situation.
Really?
I kid you not. And I'm so frustrated because like you, I believe you said you had not many miles on these tires. I don't know, but I only had maybe 1,000 miles on my new tires, and I got a nail in that exact same spot. It's like it's just barely on the shoulder.
That's
and
the one.
They won't fix it, and I'm so frustrated that I'm so cheap that I pump my darn tire up every time I get gas at this point because it goes flat that fast. It's nuts. So
well, mine doesn't seem to be going flat at this point, but I do have a pump that I carry in the back of the car, which plugs in, the electric pump.
Just spray a bunch of Fix-A-Flat in it.
Oh, no, because, but then, mate, you wouldn't want to do that because when they try and get that tyre off, when it does have to be changed, it's bloody awful.
It's a mess. Literally a mess.
So anyway, I had the coffee machine blow up. They blew the circuit board in the house. The fridge went haywire.
Oh, no.
And then, so I'm like, what else could go wrong? What's that in my tyre? Oh, no.
Wait till all those components are smart and all have Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Yep.
You think it's bad now?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
When they start talking to each other, let's all break down now. And they do.
Yeah.
Hearing you talking about Li-Fi, I'm working on a podcast for Telstra, which is like our big telco here. Do you know the next big thing is actually going to be Li-Fi? So not over wireless, but by light, transmitted by light.
Really?
Yeah, that'll be the next big thing. Li-Fi, more secure and obviously heaps faster. So, yeah.
But line of sight, obviously.
Well, I don't know. That's the interesting thing. We haven't delved that far into the interviews that we're putting together for this podcast. But light is the next big thing apparently.
Yeah, but they've already
over
done
fiber optics. Like light has been the thing.
No, as to replace Wi-Fi. So to replace your wireless connection, instead of using essentially RF, it'll be using light. So
laser beams.
I don't know. I don't know exactly how it works. Once we finish the series, I'll let you know because I'll be hearing more about it in a couple of weeks' time when we do some more interviews.
This is definitely new territory, right? Because
here's the overall thing. Li-Fi is a high-speed bidirectional networked and mobile communications data using light. Li-Fi comprises multiple light bulbs that form a wireless network offering a substantially similar experience to Wi-Fi, except using the light spectrum.
There you go. Interesting. Right?
So does that mean that it's going to be safer than Wi-Fi, as in health issues?
You just get a different cancer.
You just get a different cancer. That's right. You get skin cancer instead. That's right. Yes.
But you look good. Yeah. But
you get a sunburn and then you get cancer from the sunburn. So it's not directly related.
Oh, well, that sounds better then. At least you look healthy.
Yeah.
You can put some sunscreen on your device and then it will be protected from the network.
It's
not a firewall.
That's right. Just go down to Coles and buy a 15 plus and away you go.
Which would be Walmart.
I really don't want my kids surfing the internet anymore and put some some zinc oxide over the optical port.
Don't go surfing the internet without blockout.
Slips up slap. You might.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. So that's obviously going to affect us at some point.
Yeah. Well, the other interesting thing that came out of this podcast for me was we were talking about before we started recording was that I got to use a Zoom recorder for the first time the other night. I had to go and do some pickups for this interview, and the guy who's the host was flying out to New York the next day, so the only time to do it was on Wednesday night. So I grabbed a mate's Zoom recorder and my trusty old 416 and ran and found a quiet place in the office building where he was actually doing a presentation that night and dropped down a few pickup lines. But they're very handy, those little Zoom recorder things. Have you guys had any experience with those?
Mm-hmm. I've used one here and there.
Is it the 4, the 4N, the H?
Yeah, the 4N.
The 5,
Sorry, yeah, the H4N. So yeah, really nice, really nice. I was because usually I grab the laptop in the M box, and that's because that's what I have lying around. And I thought, you know what, I can't be bothered. I know my mate's got this Zoom recorder. I'll borrow it. And
I thought you'd have the Nagra.
Awesome. The Nagra. Why would you think
those are like $8,000?
Yeah,
exactly. Go ahead, Robbo. You're so cheap.
Although Sound Devices came out with a new 3-channel interface recorder. And apparently it has a standalone function where it can play the tracks back and you can punch in, although they charge like an extra $100 for that. But that's kind of a neat thing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, the Sound Device stuff they've come out with some really cool little price competitive products that it's a USB interface and a recorder all in one unit. And a mixer.
Really good mic preamps.
And good mic preamps and onboard DSP. And it's got just lots of cool stuff. I saw it in person at NAMM last year, or actually NAB, and was very, very, very impressed with it.
Only trouble is if it goes wrong, you lose everything.
Yeah, well, I mean, Sound Devices, their lineage is stuff for live. Their stuff's built for film production mixing. So,
and like their things actually offer, like their higher end ones offer the ability to record at 2 paths at the same time.
Yeah, that's true. These are really more prosumery. This product you're talking about is called the Mix 3 and the Mix 6.
Because most of their stuff is like, $1,500, $2,000. Right. This is like $500, $700. And it's
a sweet spot between a Zoom or a Tascam and a Nagra.
Right.
Or one of those other extremely expensive production, a Diva or something. Yeah. And these are fall on a really good middle ground in terms of build quality and all that good stuff. But the Zooms are great. I love those little products. I have a Tascam DR40 that's really their take on that Zoom 4.
I had an M Audio thing that was like that.
Yeah.
And it had 4-channel, and you could get 2x or 2 1/4 that were balanced into it.
Yeah. Mine will record the stereo mic on board and then the 2 1/4 or the 2 XLRs on 4 tracks total. So you could do like 2 ISO mics or 2 ISO mics and then a stereo pair for the room or something. So pretty slick little thing. I mean, sometimes you want a handheld device that's built to do a single job. They're always going to be more reliable, in my opinion, than recording to any computer. They have a dedicated
except
job.
for Boom Recorder. You talked about how stable Reaper is.
Oh, I used that years ago.
I love Boom Recorder.
Right.
It's like this guy in Denmark. It's like it does all the time code stuff. It has the pre-record function, so when you're late on the record button, it was already recording.
That's right.
Oh, wow.
And it's just stupid stable on a Mac. I mean, every screen sharing app you have can come on. It doesn't matter. This thing just like once it's set recording, that's all it does. It records. It doesn't even play back. And it's got very good meters.
It has a specific job.
How does it do that pre-record thing? Does it record like a buffer?
Yep. It has a buffer. You see it spinning in red. And then when you hit record, the buffer closes up and then you keep on going. So you get 5 seconds if you're...
I'm flashing back. When I was still a sound mixer, I used it for a few shows. And it was rock solid. I mean, I knew sound mixers that were bringing around Mac Minis on their cart.
My kit...
And just running that.
My remote record kit is I got many, but one of them that I've used a lot actually because it was so easy to run and gun with and it was lightweight was still have it running, a Mac G4 laptop running Boom Recorder, running an M Audio 1418. So you get 8 inputs there with a mic preamp, and then a Behringer, the 8-channel preamps that go to optical. So there's 16 inputs into Boom Recorder on a G4. Never failed me.
G4. That's going
G4.
back a ways.
Yeah, that's going back.
Going back to like 2004.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah,
way
totally
back.
Just boom, chords.
But it goes back to what we talked about last episode, isn't it? If it's working, don't fuck with it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a great kit. It just, it's like purpose built. It's all I use it for. And there you go. And I've got M-powered Pro Tools on there too.
Oh, yeah,
Powered
that's right.
Pro Tools.
That's how you do piss off the client, because then you lose the recording.
Yes. Yeah, you don't want to do that. Absolutely.
So what do you recommend for, this one for you, George, what do you recommend as a road kit for someone like me, a voice dude who's staying in a hotel somewhere?
Oh man, well, yeah, the ultimate, really still kind of proven device that just throw in your bag with your 41.6.
41.6
nowadays.
yeah.
41.6.
And
41.6
is I did to say that they had a bad batch for a while, but they're up. Their production quality seems to have stabilized. Now would be the Ascentrance MicPort Pro.
Yep.
I'm on one right now.
Yeah, I mean they're in the high $100 range, $200 ish. And I have a couple of them. My girlfriend's got one I gave her, and they're just great little piece of gear. Very, very light.
I think for our industry, a slightly better one actually might be the Shure X2U.
Yep, that one too.
Because it's got the volume, the blend knob between
It has
the
a
computer.
blend. That's right.
Yeah.
For monitoring.
And I think also like the MicPort Pro's got the phantom power on the very bottom. It's a little bit cumbersome.
Fiddly.
Yeah, and the Shure is definitely it's cast metal, but both of those are like all you need. That and a laptop.
Well, I bought the, I didn't actually buy it. I should actually make a disclaimer here that it was given to me by Rode, but I got the AI1, their little interface.
Who makes it?
Rode.
Oh, okay.
And it's like it's rock solid, and it sounds amazing. And the one of the best things about the thing is the headphone amp, because you can actually most of them have got really low volume, but this thing's got tons.
1/4 inch or little mini like 1/8 inch.
Quarter inch.
So yeah, that's better right there.
They've done some real voodoo on the circuit design to get enough juice out of a 500 milliamp headphone or USB power supply, to get that. Centrance has also got a new product that's been highly controversial at least in my circles, in the mixer face, because they did an Indiegogo, or not an Indiegogo, but I think it was a Kickstarter for this product at least 4 years ago. I know a lot of people that sent them money, and it's just now hitting the stores. In fact, I see it on a website right here, and it takes the MicPort Pro and kind of gives it a lot more bells and whistles, really. It's got internal power. It's a recorder. It's got monitor matrix for monitoring left, right, center. You can monitor one or the other in either ear. It does a lot of little extra tricks. But I haven't gotten to use it in real life yet. I saw it at NAMM show. But if you want something a little more robust with a few more features, and you like that idea of a built-in backup recorder inside the unit that will record simultaneously, it could be a pretty sweet piece of kit. And it'll record to an iPhone too.
Yeah, backup's
Yeah, I mean,
always handy.
basically the idea is that it uses the iPhone as the interface. Like, can't you strap your phone to it practically?
That was the original model. The original model was designed to be something that you would strap your phone directly to. It even had little rubber straps. But I think the iPhone size grew so much, it just didn't make any sense anymore. It was smaller than the iPhone.
Yeah, that's right.
And they've completely changed the form factor of the unit now. It has a completely different design than when it first was designed. It's called the R4 now, the Mixer Face R4. So for $350, it's pretty competitive with what else is out there. And if its preamps hold up to the Centrance preamp quality that they say that they're supposed to have, and what people have experienced, it could be really a really nice piece of gear.
Well, we should do an experiment, Robbo, because I know you're coming down to Melbourne to record a few bits and pieces later in the year. So I should bring some of this stuff along, and let's do an experiment.
That sounds like a very fine idea.
Yeah, let's do it.
To fill Robert and Georgie and I'm doing this Telstra podcast that I'm working on later in the year, they're doing some live conference stuff that they want us to record and turn around into their podcast, and they want it turned around overnight. So we're organising voiceover talent and, obviously recording on site and all that sort of stuff. It's a huge little project. So so that might be interesting to play with.
Yeah, because I really like that little AI. I think it's super, and I also think that Rode NT1 would be great for that kind of stuff, sitting in a hotel room. But we're mucking around with the idea of using the Chaotica eyeball, which I'm not a huge fan of, but I think in a hotel room it could actually work, especially with someone who is not going to be happy about sticking their head under a doona.
The only thing I'll say about because Andrew sent me a file of him recording on the Konica eyeball. For me, it sounds like it loses some of the top end. Is that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It loses
kind of a filter.
Chunk of it.
It filters out top end and adds back in low end. So
it messes with the microphone's polar pattern.
It really does.
Right.
And that's a good or bad thing. I mean, in general, it's bad.
Yeah.
And in some cases, it's good. Like I have clients that send me their samples recorded with an eyeball regularly. And I always say, send me one with and send me one without. I like to hear it with the eyeball, without. And then I'll make a determination. Because I find if it's already a bright mic with a female talent, then sometimes it really is helpful. Warms up the mic, takes out some of the top end, re-EQs it in a good way. But oftentimes, unfortunately, it is not sonically transparent. As much as they tried, it is not even close. So got to watch out for that.
Yeah, being used to Andrew's really nicely recorded stuff, I listened to the file he sent me and went, doesn't sound like it came out of your room.
But it was just worth an experiment to see what it sounded like. Because I just think, when if you do a pillow mountain or use a porta booth or something, for someone who's not a voiceover guy, it's going to be really kind of a little bit intimidating, I would imagine, staring at something like that. So
yeah. Mm-hmm. Although we're doing this stuff the other night when I went in to meet him, we actually recorded the pickups in a couple of different places just to give me a few options. He was sort of pretty cool with that, so I think that might be not so much of an issue.
Yeah,
nice.
Yeah, use the 41.6.
The 41.6, the old trusty 41.6, indeed.
Or even like an SE, one of the SE shields. What do you think of those, George?
The Reflexion filter.
Yeah.
Another innovative product that came out a few years ago, takes a lively room and makes it slightly less lively. That's about all it really does, at least for the microphone, I think.
There's a big difference in the different makes. Like who's the company? Is it SE?
Well, everybody's knocked
SE.
it off. SE invented they invented the reflection filter. That's what they call it, the reflection filter.
And then, some of them have better batting in them that make them actually suck up more than others.
Yeah.
But generally, you can definitely help a situation with that. They're kind of big and bulky.
Yeah, I really find them to be, they're used in the wrong context in most cases in voiceover, because people will buy one and just stick it up in their living room or their bedroom and think it's enough. And it never is enough on its own. And so by the time you've bought that thing and then you've done everything else it requires to make the room still sound good, you don't even need it anymore.
The thing about it is this, it's really attacking to some degree the wrong side of the problem, because you have to look at what it's trying to do. Is it trying to prevent your voice from getting out to the rest of the room and therefore exciting it? Because that I think it can do.
A little bit.
But then if what you're trying to do is protect the mic from the room, you're really protecting the back side of the mic anyways. And the place, usually when you're trying to deal with a room, one of the first things you want to deal with is the wall behind you.
Right.
Not the wall behind your microphone.
Right, exactly. So that thing in conjunction with something behind you, like I'll set one up. If that's all they have, I'll say, okay, open up the closet doors to your clothing closet. Put that behind you. Put the microphone in front of you with this thing behind the mic. And together, they do a pretty good job. They work together pretty well. You need that big dead absorbing wall behind you, behind your position, and then it works okay. Aston microphones, they make the Aston Origin. They make a really interesting take on this. It's really cool looking. It's purple, which is fun. It has a little bit more coverage because it kind of curves on the top and the bottom, not just the sides. I've yet to try it in the real world, so I can't really answer to how effective it is or not. But I've tried the king daddy of them all, though, which is the IsoVox 2. If you go on YouTube, search for IsoVox, ISOVOX 2.
Is that the one where you stick your head inside?
You put the entire thing over your head. It stands on a speaker stand.
Yeah. I saw that at NAMM a couple of years ago.
Yeah. I mean, I got to hand it to the kid that came up with it. Swedish kid. It does kill a lot of reverberation. It really makes a super dead chamber. But it's still, much in the way that the eyeball does, it still colors the sound of the mic.
Yeah. And it's expensive.
It's very expensive. It's about $1,000 US.
Porta Booth to Go or that one has made slightly more affordable versions of the same thing. They don't quite look as nice as the IsoVox.
No, the IsoVox is really well made. Good engineering. Watch my video on YouTube. I did a review on it from my George the Tech channel, IsoVox 2. you know, you can really get an idea of what it takes to assemble it. When I do a review, I don't say, here's the product and this is what it does. I go, here's the product. This is what it's like to get it out of the box. This is what it's like to put the dang thing together. You know, so it's really pretty comprehensive. But you need a big speaker stand, like a PA speaker stand to put this thing on. It's so heavy, you know.
I would say that the ISOVOX is approaching the helmet design of the voiceover suit.
See, we're onto something for sure.
We got to do it.
Yeah.
We got to get a prototype together, surely.
Yes,
Voiceover suit.
I reckon Auralex should do this. Auralex should do one of these just for the hell of it and turn up at NAMM or something with the Auralex voiceover suit. It'll be sensational.
Oh man, so
They will
funny.
have to use old moon boots from the 80s.
Yes, that's right.
There's a company out there that does branding for radio stations called Benstown Branding. G'day to Andreas, if you're listening.
Oh, yeah.
And their logo is this like this dude in a spacesuit. And I've always pictured their logo would look exactly what our voiceover suit would look like.
It is. They even have a guy. They even have that mascot suit. They have pictures of a guy wearing it in the office. They're quite an entertaining company. Actually,
They do. Yeah, they're great. They do a really good job. And Andreas, the guy who owns it is a really nice guy to boot. So yeah.
Now, we should get to our interview because I know we've got to shut the door on this show pretty soon. So our interview is with one half of the songwriting team from the band The Hooters, who had hits like All You Zombies and We Danced, and We Danced, if you like. They also were Cyndi Lauper's backup band for She's So Unusual. And Eric also wrote the mega hit, One of Us, for Joan Osborne. He's currently living in Sweden. So let's cross to Stockholm to Eric Bazilian. I should give you a bit of backstory of how this all happened. But one of my oldest friends, in fact, my oldest friend, and I'm not saying I hang out with young people, I've actually known him longer than anybody else. In fact, we've known each other since we were 3.
Wow.
He's got a contract in Stockholm. He's working there at the moment, and he's a bit of a guitar nut. And he just happened to be, and it's Robert Simmons. Hello, Robert. I know he's listening. He just happened to be in a guitar store and bumped into our guest. He posted something on Facebook, and I went, oh, that's funny. I interviewed this guy back in the 80s. So anyway, cut a long story short, Robert sent me a Facebook link. I then used Messenger, sent the photograph to our guest, and the rest is history. And our guest is Eric Bazilian. How are you, Eric?
Just wonderful, thanks. How are you?
Good. And how was Robert? Was he nice to you?
He was very friendly. Very friendly indeed. We had a very nice chat about all sorts of things.
Did he buy the Hagstrom?
He did not, at least not while I was there. I'm hoping he'll go back and get it because the wand chooses the wizard and the wand seemed to choose him.
Yeah, because I just bought a Hagstrom, but that's a vintage one, and mine's not.
It's a specialty instrument. The vintage ones are certainly furniture for the most part.
Yes. Don't tell him that, of course. But maybe that's what he wants.
Yeah.
And this particular store here in Stockholm is sort of a legendary place. It's an amazing vibe, and he's got all sorts of really interesting curiosity items hanging around. Sven, who owns it, he's a drummer, and he's got probably 20 sets of drums in that store, and then he's got another 100 sets in his warehouse.
Wow.
And then all kinds of interesting guitars. He's been thinning the herd a bit. I think he's actually closing the store, and he's just going to move his business back to his warehouse. So he's a couple of the really nice '60s Strats have gone. The 56 Les Paul is no longer there.
56
good.
Les Paul. Wow.
That's good money. I know that. Do you know of Kirk Pengilly from In Excess?
Yeah, I know of him. I'm sure I met him back in the day.
Yeah, well, he just had a big auction at Sotheby's and sold a bunch of stuff just like that.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, huge auction.
I still have mine. That will be the last guitar I part with. In fact, I think I'm going to be buried with it, my 56 Gold Top.
Maybe they'll have you taxidermied so they don't have to bury the guitar and just stand you in the corner holding the guitar.
perhaps they could get me to Madame Tussauds.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I was going to also suggest probably that it wouldn't be a great idea to tell anybody where you were buried. That's right. Not stay buried with you for long.
It'd be like Tutankhamun.
Yeah.
Yeah, good point. Good point. I wonder if Joe Bonamassa will be buried with his 9 sunbursts.
9.
Don't know.
Wow.
Oh, he's got 9 of them, and he's got a flying. He's got everything. I mean, he is the ultimate guitar. He literally calls it guitar safari. Every town he goes into, he picks up insane quantities of ridiculously perfect specimens of everything.
Wow. Sounds like me in the local music store.
Yes.
What plugins can I get today? What else? Oh, look at that.
Yeah, it's all online plugins.
Yeah.
Now, we should give a bit of background because there's going to be people listening to the show that are going, who's Eric Bazilian? Well, let me tell you, children, sit down and listen to this. You actually kicked off working with Cyndi Lauper, She's So Unusual, working on that album. I know you'd had bands before, but that was a mega album that you did. You played on. You did arrangements for. Then, of course, you had the band The Hooters.
Which we still do.
Which you still do. In fact,
Very
you're touring
actively.
next year, I hear. Is that right?
We're touring this summer.
Wow. Okay, well, watch out for that. You're not coming here, though, I gather, to Australia.
No, that's a long and sad story.
Because I did see you play live here in Australia, and in fact, I think you only did 1 show. Is that correct?
We did 3 if you count Molly Meldrum. We did Countdown.
Yes.
And then we did a show at some venue in Sydney, and then we went to Melbourne, where bada bing, bada boom.
That's where we met first time, and that was a big show.
It's huge, and it really was. At that point, I thought, this is it. Our career is in Australia now. We're all going to move here, raise our families there, and live the life.
Well, it was interesting because you had I think you only had about 2 hit singles at that point. All You Zombies.
All You Zombies was it. It went number 1 of all songs.
Yeah, and then so basically you did a gig on 1 single.
I know,
and the
crazy,
place went
isn't it?
off. I remember the place went off.
It really did, and I told you in my message that at one point I looked up and I forgot that I was completely across the world. I felt like I was right at home. It looked like our audience at home. It felt like our audience at home. It was almost a moving experience.
Now, after the Hooters, well, even though you're still going, you also have dabbled in many things and continued to songwrite and arrange. You wrote one of the biggest hits of the 90s for Joan Osborne, One of Us, and you also produced the album Relish. Is that correct?
Well, Rick Chertoff was the actual producer. Though Rob and I were the co-production team, as it were. We really all worked together. And credit where credit's due. William Whitman, who was the engineer, who had really as much input as anyone else into the production of it.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, it was Rick Chertoff. He's the guy that insisted Cyndi Lauper sing "Girls Just Want to Have Fun," a song that she said, "I will never sing." And we tried many versions of it, and it wasn't until I came up with that guitar riff that she said, "Oh, I always wanted to sing that song."
Hindsight, yes.
Yeah, right.
The other notable things in your career, you opened in the Live Aid concerts in Philadelphia in 1985, the Amnesty International concert at the Giant Stadium in 1986, and the opening act for Roger Waters' The Wall in Berlin when the wall came down.
That was quite a day and night. That was my birthday, too. I had forgotten it was my birthday until the very end of the show, where we were sent up to the top of the scaffolding on stage left, which was probably 100 meters up. The Scorpions were on the other scaffold on stage right. And I'm looking out on 300,000 people when the fireworks go off. And that's when I realized, oh, they're saying happy birthday to me.
Oh. I've seen the video. They do. They do.
It was all about me.
Well, of course it was. You also wrote Robbie Williams' first solo hit, number 2 in the UK.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, you've worked with the Scorpions, Midure, Patti Smythe, Bon Jovi. I also know that you worked with Prince. I'm not quite sure what you did with Prince, but what was that?
Well, he covered One of Us, totally out of left field. All of a sudden, I heard he's got a new album coming out with 3 covers, and he'd never recorded any covers before. One of which was One of Us. It's very grandiose, very Prince-like. It's sort of a cartoon version of the original. It's actually in the same key, which is a bit of a challenge for him because I know people's vocal ranges. I can tell from hearing one track really kind of where someone's voice sits, and he's got that amazing falsetto, but his natural range really kind of ends at around an F sharp or a G, and the chorus on that goes to an A. And he did a very clever thing. The verse sits great in his vocal range, so he sang a lower harmony on the chorus and had a synth play the melody. I don't know if this is of interest to your listeners, but
absolutely.
I find it fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, you're going somewhere that I was going to head anyway, so keep going.
Well, actually, I'll go back about 6 months before that. I got a cassette in the mail from a Japanese Hooters fan with a live recording, bootleg recording from the Budokan, 2 nights of live recordings. And he was doing one of us already then. And I guess this was before well before the album came out, before I knew it was going to be on the album. And the intro, the band is pumping, bump, 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 bump. And he starts speaking, "I love this song. This song was written by Joan Osborne. Sing along, won't you?"
Whoops.
That's fine. They spelled my name right on the album, which is a very rare and unusual thing. Well, nothing was better than having Dr. Evil cover it.
Dr. Evil?
Yes, Austin Powers 2. There's a.
Oh, that's right. Yes, I do remember. Yes.
And the best thing about that is, he's playing it with the little number 2 is on a little white piano on top of his grand piano, and he's playing it for number 2 and his minions. And the year is 1966 or thereabouts. And when he finishes this, he just does like 30 seconds of it, and he says, "Thank you, I wrote that." And the fact that he was playing the song in 1960, whatever, he actually had written it because it was 30 years until the song was actually written.
Time capsule. Now, we should ask you, why are you in Stockholm and not back in Philly?
Well, I married into the faith 20-some years ago, and I've spent every summer here since. And we've spent a couple of full years here, and it just seemed like it was time for a change. I was very, very comfortable at home in Pennsylvania, in my house, in my incredibly tricked-out studio that's held together by Scotch tape and rubber bands. Yeah. So I just sort of felt like it was time for a change for me. All Swedes really wanted to be back here, and our daughter, who was the one offspring we have left at home, wanted to finish school here. So it seemed like a perfect opportunity. We found a great apartment to rent here. We rented out our house there. I still have access to the studio, so it was a perfect alignment of circumstance.
You're living there permanently? Is that semi-permanently?
Well, for it'll be 2 years, and then we will reevaluate. I'm back and forth a lot, and I'm touring a lot as well, so I'm still a U.S. resident.
Yeah.
I'm interested in something you said in there. You said you would get feeling a bit comfortable in Philly. Do you need to be uncomfortable, do you think, to keep your craft up?
I think too much comfort is a handicap. I think that one needs to occasionally push the envelope a bit, change a venue. There were a lot of opportunities in Philadelphia, but there's a tendency for what happens in Philly to stay in Philly.
Yeah.
And there's such a vibrant music scene here in Stockholm, although stylistically not necessarily what I'm about, but they seem to greet me here with open arms. So a lot of really different opportunities have presented themselves for me while I've been here. And it's really been fun.
As I mentioned to you, actually, a mate of mine, Chris Bailey, who people may know from the Saints, he also married a Swedish lady. Even though they're living in Amsterdam now and have been for quite some time, he was living in Malmo for years. And from what I gather, the music scene, he recorded quite a few albums down there. It was pretty happening down in Malmo.
Yeah, well, it's funny, it's the same country, but it's the distances are so great here. It's a very different scene in Malmo. You're in Malmo, you're in Malmo. You're in Gothenburg, you're in Gothenburg. You're in Stockholm, you're pretty much in Stockholm. I mean, I'm living sort of right in the heart of the artichoke here, and it's amazing. Every block probably has 20 recording studios.
Wow, really?
Socked away, and they're usually a windowless cubicle somewhere, but many hit songs are written and recorded there. I got very lucky here. I was in a bit of a panic when I realized I was going to be spending so much time here. I can really work anywhere with a laptop and a small interface, a couple of mics, some guitars, and a bass and a keyboard. But even where would I set that up? And as it turned out, there's a large room in the basement here that no one's using, in the basement of our apartment building. And the neighbors were actually very happy to have me using it. So I set up down there. I got that SonarWorks speaker correction thing because the room is sonically a nightmare. And it seems to work very well. And since I've been down there, I've recorded a Swedish hard rock band. Everything except the drums. We sent files and had the drums recorded somewhere else, but recorded all the vocals, guitars, bass down there, and it worked out just great. The band is called Crash Diet, and apparently they're huge in South America.
Oh, right, okay. So what did you use to set up your speakers to get the balance right?
It's something that my friend William Whittam recommended called SonarWorks Reference, and it comes with a flat reference mic, and you measure the drivers on the speakers, and then it gives you 20 different spots around the room to measure, and then it gives you an EQ curve, which it's a plug-in that you put on the last insert on your playback bus, and it basically does the reverse of what the EQ curve of the speakers in the room is.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Genelec have just released something similar to that, I think. It's do you know about that, Eric?
No, but that's probably just to work with their speakers.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Yeah, JBL does that too. The thing about this is you measure anything, and it's really amazing. And I keep doing the measurements because the curve just looks so crazy. This can't be the truth, but I keep doing it and it keeps coming up the same. And what's really interesting is it shows even shows the asymmetry in the room. Like the left and right curves are somewhat different, and as well as the levels.
Wow.
That's
and
interesting.
it also has, they should really give me free shit after this.
Oh, it's
Yeah, they should definitely, yeah.
Sponsored by.
It also comes with preset corrections for different headphones.
Okay. Wow.
Wow.
Basically, any headphone you can imagine. So I was surprised because I had a little impulse buy. I bought the Sennheiser HD 800s, which are amazing, and even they have a curve. You would think that they would be absolutely flat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, there you go.
Yeah. We were talking about the headphones the other week, about those. I can't even think of the word called. George was talking about them. But they actually, they send sound into your eardrum, and the reflection goes back, and then it calculates your hearing, where you've lost hearing and the strengths of your hearing, and then adapts the sound that you're going to hear in the headphones to your hearing.
I've just had my hearing tested. I don't need to be reminded about that.
Sorry, what was that? What did you say?
No, I've just had my hearing tested again, and I don't need to be reminded about the fact that I basically have nothing over 2K.
Yeah, we'll put the dog out in a moment. Now, you mentioned you're working with a road case. I'm curious, what's in your rig that you take on the road with you?
If I know I'm going to be gone for a while, I'll bring the Apollo. I have an Apollo Duo loaded with every plug-in they make. I will bring one good mic. Now that I've got the MT711 back, it'll probably be that one. I've got a couple of M930s with me, and I also have that Slate mic, the virtual mic system.
Yeah.
Which I got that while my Gefels were in the shop, and it's really pretty miraculous. It really does an amazing job at modeling all of these amazing vintage tube microphones.
Yeah, he's been certainly, I saw him at NAMM getting up on stage and spruiking it, and I've seen a couple of people talk to him. There's a guy called Warren Hewitt who does a video podcast called Produce Like a Pro. And he interviewed him quite a while ago and went through the whole thing. It looked really good, really interesting. But you have to use his mic, and I think there's another one where you can use any mic as long as it's pretty flat.
Well, that's supposedly you can use this software with any flat mic. Then, Antares has their mic modeler where you actually select your source mic, and then it can supposedly change it into whatever. And I've used that as well, and that works too. And I've used this Slate mic with none of the modeling software, and it sounds great.
Oh, it's interesting.
I mean, really, you can do a lot with just about anything. It's amazing what EQ and compression can do for you.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Well, is it not true that Bono did the vocals for, I think it was The Unforgettable Fire in the control room with an SM58?
I've heard that that's always his mic of choice.
Yeah, right. There you go.
And we've done. We did a live record last year, and it was recorded with whatever Beta 58s, whatever our front of house guy likes to use, and there were vocal bits that we had to punch in. We punched them in with the Gefell 92 through my signal chain, and really nobody ever said, "Oh, you punched in with a different microphone there."
Obviously, that's how you process the signal that you put in there, I guess. Yeah. But you're one of the few people I know that the reason I know you've got these microphones is because I've had Microtech Gefells for years. I love them. And I was just perusing the internet one day to see who else had them. And I saw that Rob Hyman had them in his studio at Elm Street Studios. I think it's the name of his studio. I saw that, and also someone mentioned that it was on Gear Sluts, I think, that Cyndi Lauper, she uses Microtech, and it's probably with you guys, I guess. I don't know. Yeah,
probably, because I know she has a Browner at home.
Oh, okay. You've got quite a collection of Microtech Gefells.
I've got, what have I got? I've got 2 of these MT711s. I also have the 711S or T, whatever the newer version of that is. I've got 2 of the, whatever the little pencil guy is. After learning my lesson with having the 711 on a snare drum.
Yes, smash.
I just can't abide by a 57 on a snare. I'm sorry, everybody loves it. I don't. It's not my thing. And then I've got the 92, which is actually, I think, one serial number away from the one we used on the Joan Osborne record. That was all the Gefell UM92.
Do any artists you work with have any weird preferences? Stuff that you've had to go and research when you've heard what they wanted to bring along, or anything like that?
They've all been pretty happy with what I've put up in front of them.
Yeah.
I mean, when I'm working in my home studio back home, I'll put up the Browner, put up the UM92. Occasionally, I'll throw up one of the 711s, and some people prefer that. I know that when we were recording the Hooters, every time we would go into the record plant, the legendary late great record plant, we would line up every mic they had and do a shootout, and we always ended up with a FET 47.
Is that right?
Always. It just destroyed everything in its path, including they had 2 really nice 47s there.
So what was so good about the FET 47?
It just sounded good. It had a presence and a bigness to it, and it seemed to work on our voices.
Yeah, because I picked up a mic, which I've then sold, actually, and Robbo was using it last week when he was in Melbourne, which was a guy out of the Ukraine, I think, Jay-Z, and there was a shootout on Gear Sluts, and the guy that put it up actually wanted to get the premium engineers who were listening. He knew the guys he wanted. And out of those 8 guys, 7 of them thought that the Jay-Z V47 was the 47, and the real 47 in the mix wasn't the real 47.
Yeah. And I'm sure you've seen the shootouts with the slate mic compared to the originals.
Yeah.
It's it's all in the ear of the beholder.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. I had the opportunity to meet 3 of the Beatles at different times, and when I met Paul about 30 years ago, we did Top of the Pops with him, and I had my list of questions. If I ever meet Paul, what did you play on this? What did you use on that? And he really didn't know, and he really didn't care. It, like you said, it was whatever was there.
Well, it's funny because one of the guys, the engineers, lives in Sydney, a guy called Richard Lush, and he was talking about, because I said to him, what was the normal day at EMI Studios? How did the days work? It was very factory-like. They just set up the kit, they put all the mics in, everything's ready to go. But the weirdest thing, and I don't know whether this is weird or maybe you do things the same way, but the bass track was the last thing they put down, the bass guitar.
Yeah, that, I believe from Sgt. Pepper on, that's what he did. I know. Early on they recorded as a band, live vocals as well. It was really quite extraordinary that they were able to do that and get the incredible clarity of sound that they did. And that was Norman Smith,
who became Hurricane Smith. And I didn't know that until recently.
Oh, babe. It's funny because William Whitman, who is my guru for all things sonic, he engineered the Cindy record, the Joan record. He engineered Nervous Night, which had All You Zombies, and then we danced on it. But his philosophy with microphones is, why wouldn't you use the best microphone you have for everything?
Yeah, and
that's what I do. You know,
Yeah.
I used to set up, you know, a little pencil mic for an acoustic guitar because that's what you do. And then he came over once and said, well, why aren't you just using your 92? It's the best mic you have. Okay, you roll off some bottom end.
Yep.
Yeah, duh.
Now, that's interesting. You talk about the bottom end in the 92. Do you find that that Gefell does have a lot of bottom end?
I find that acoustic guitars in general have a lot of bottom end, which needs to be rolled off. So I don't know that the 92 has any more bottom end than this 711 or well, definitely more than a 57.
Yeah.
But and I find it's a very nicely balanced mic. And remember, they vary from mic to mic.
Yeah, depending on how old is yours?
I got mine in 96. I mean, I have actually all of my Gefells I got in 96, 97, except for the M930s. I got them in 2002.
Now, this is funny because I'd never heard of Microtech Gefells, and whenever you mention Microtech Gefells to a lot of people, they have no idea what you're talking about.
I know, I love that.
Yeah, but and of course they're the original Neumann, really. I mean, the Neumann factory was moved to Gefell, and they were Neumann Gefell until the wall basically went up, and that was the end of that. But so, how did you hear about Microtech Gefells?
Well, when we went in to do the Joan Osborne record, William Whitman had learned about them and had gotten a room full of them. So that's basically what we used. I know he had at least a pair of the 711s and the 92 for the vocal. I mean, you know, obviously I think he was SM7 on the kick drum and bass. But it was mostly Gefells. It was that and the Daking modules, which Jeff Daking is a good friend of ours, and he actually set up the studio in a house that we'd rented to make that album, and he let us use his prototype modules, and I think we cut just about everything through them.
So your studio, can you give us a rundown what it's like, the one back in the US?
It's a carriage house. Our house is 130 years old. Yep. And the reason we jumped on it was because it had this great little carriage house in the back. And originally, I just soundproofed the downstairs because upstairs was just an unusable attic. So for the first 5 years, I worked in one room. You know, when I cut drums, I put headphones on. And then I built up. I had a friend who's a guitarist and builder. And I said, I'll produce your album. You build my studio. So we dormered out the second floor, and I put all these great windows across. And I had George Augsburger come in and do wave his magic wand a couple of times. But so basically, downstairs is now the loud room where I have the drums mic'd up, and all of the guitar amps that I haven't turned on since I profiled them into my Kemper. And then upstairs is where the magic happens. I've got my big console-y thing with all of the outboard gear in it, and my Pro Tools HDX rig. I have a 1901 Steinway C that everyone scratches their head and tries to figure out how I got it in there.
How did you get it in there?
I had sent the piano off to Steinway to get it rebuilt. It needed some love, but right before they took it, they measured it. And when they built the staircase up, they took that into account. Well, they measured wrong.
Oh, no.
So, fortunately, when I built up, I was going to put a deck on the side, and there was sort of a half-size door there already. So I said, let's just make that a full-size door. And eventually, I built the deck. Well, I never built the deck, but I had the full-size door. So fortunately, they were able to crane the piano in through that door.
Wow. That would have been a disaster.
Oh, man. And it was also a good thing because it was a couple more years until we ran water out to the studio. So that door became the men's room at night.
Yes.
Nice.
Now, what's the movie? You know, the Mighty Mighty Eagle? Mighty Mighty Eagle.
Yes. So the obvious question comes then, Eric, favorite piece of outboard gear?
I'd have to say, for Mike Pre's, my Dakings, I just love the way they sound.
Yeah.
For a while, I was doing that whole mix and match thing. I had a couple of DW Ferns that I used on vocals, which sounded great, but I always found that I had to brighten them up to make them sit in the track with everything that I'd recorded through the discrete solid state Dakings. I'm mostly using the channel strip 4 with no EQs, because the plugins are perfectly adequate. Although for drums, I have his original EQ strips set up, and I pretty much never touch them. For recording guitars and such, I've got a Manley L-Op, which is kind of like an LA2A, which adds a nice sauce to everything. Vocals, I always record through an API 525, which is the one thing I have not found a really good plugin for yet.
Yeah, really?
So someone does make one, but I'm waiting for UAD to put that in their thing so I can just record through it. I always use the Daking compressors on my master bus. Slate master bus comes close, the red, but given my preference, I'll use hardware on the master bus. And then I've got an A&D Compex, which is sitting around there somewhere. But all of those records that we strive to emulate were made on consoles that had one kind of mic on them. So
yeah, exactly.
So
what about
like
plugins then? What's the go-to ones for them?
It changes week to week. It's whatever the flavor of the.
What's the new toy in the toolbox? You're a bit like me.
Well, the Slate stuff I'm using a lot, obviously, and the UAD. My go-to vocal chain, if I'm using one of the Gefels, is the 1073 into a Fairchild. Then I love their EMT 250 emulation. I've actually been using the API channel strip in Unison. That worked out very well recently. The MJUC, I think Klangheim makes that. That's a very nice sort of LA2A-ish compressor. Actually, an esoteric plugin that I love is the DAD tape by a company called DUI from Spain, and they made the first tape and valve saturation plugins, which is the reason I bought Pro Tools. It was the first time that Pro Tools sounded like music to me. And there was a time where they hadn't updated to 64-bit, so I wasn't able to use them. And now that they're back, I've got the UAD tape machines, I've got the Slate, but them all, and they all have different flavors. But I tend to default to the DAD tape.
I'm going to hit you with probably a question you're going to scoff at me about, but being a post-production engineer, music mixing techniques have probably been something that I've never really taken any notice of until the last 4 or 5 years, when I've really sort of tried to extend myself and learn a bit more about my craft. And I've recently been toying with parallel compression on voiceover as opposed to vocals. But my question is it something you do, parallel compression, when you're mixing a vocal?
I never intentionally, just because to me, you just set the threshold right, and it's compressing the right amount. Yeah. I'm sort of old school that way. But actually, another plugin that I've recently become rather fond of is the Sheps channel strip, and since all these plugins, the Slate and the Sheps, and they all come with. There's so many components in it. I've become a fan of just checking out the different presets. Yeah, and I've noticed that a lot of the presets that I like have the compression mix dialed back to 50% on the vocals or whatever, and it works very, very well. Again, I just haven't done that. Honestly, if it's a choice between tweaking plugins and learning to play Bach violin sonatas on the mandolin, I will choose the latter.
I guess for me, it started for me because I do a bit of imaging work for radio stations still. Radio imaging production has moved a long way from when I used to do it. And they're getting these really amazing voiceover sounds, like these big, fat, completely processed and sort of not anything that you would do musically. But I sort of been sort of toying around with, how to get that sound and how to get it to sound even better. And someone suggested parallel compression, and I've sort of been toying with it. It's kind of interesting the difference it does make. And I guess, AP, if you're not aware of what we're talking about, it's where you have a voice track that you process as you normally would, but then you take that same signal and put it on another bus on your mixer, and you basically compress the living shit out of it, and then mix that in with the original. And the idea is that it's, I don't know, I mean, it's sort of giving it a bit more punch, really, isn't it, Eric?
There's a plugin called the, what is that? It's the Sound Toys, Devil Loke. Yes, it's this extreme, just absolute ultimate squash compressor, which generally one uses at about 10% of the compressed signal with that. So I guess, I have been using parallel compression, because if you use that on its own, you're just obliterating everything.
Yeah.
But it does add an exciting element to it.
It does.
I mean, there's no way you could ever make my voice anything than the mid-rangey squeak that it is. So I don't really worry about that.
What was that? I'm just writing it down. Devil Lock, LOC. Is that one?
Yeah. I think it's Sound Toys.
Okay, I'll go find it.
There's a free one that does not have a mix control on it.
Okay.
There's so many of them out there, and then I always get the emails from all of them, and especially Waves, and they're always selling everything. And Bill Whitman calls it the death by $1,029 cuts.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. They're always $29. Was $320, now $29.
Right.
Yeah, it's funny, but there's someone else who was saying recently. That now, with all the plugins, you can have a studio at home with about $3 million worth of gear in it for about $1,000.
Yeah, don't doubt that at all.
Yeah. Do you prefer working in the box?
It's the only way I work. I wouldn't know what to do with a console. I worked on a Porta studio until they built my studio, and I started with a couple of DA-88s. This was before Pro Tools had really crossed my radar. And I did get that Yamaha, whatever it was, the digital console. So I worked with that for a while, but that was really only a matter of 6 months before I got Pro Tools. And from then on, I was in the box. And, I've worked with mixers who break out into all the hardware. And I guess if that works for them, that's great. But again, even William, who is the most hardcore sonic snob, he's working in the box now.
What do you think is different about working in the box? Do you think it makes for a better product?
It makes me able to mix because I don't have a console. The Total Recall thing is great. I think the fact that it gives you infinite choices is a good thing and a bad thing. I know I've gotten up in the middle of the night saying, "Oh my God, that kick drum's too loud," and I thought, literally it'll take me 30 seconds to pull the kick drum a dB. And then, of course, that vocal could be a little brighter. And then, the sun's coming up and it wasn't broken. I fixed it.
I've heard people say that the problem is you just cannot make a decision.
I look in my Dropbox, and every song I'm working on, there are 15 mixes, 15 versions. And I listen through them and I go, what's the difference? What's the difference?
Yeah.
But I'm as time goes on, I'm kind of like I've kind of taken the "if it ain't broke, don't fix it" approach to it. It's like if I hear that something's bugging me, and no one else says, especially the artist I'm working with says anything, I'll just leave it. Yeah,
I know you've got a mate in Stockholm who's involved with casting voiceovers and stuff. So you got a bit of connection to voiceover. What would you, if you happen to be the person recording a voiceover? What would you use?
I would use the best mic I have. I would use my regular signal chain. I don't really know the particulars of voiceover. I did a voiceover, it's funny enough, for a radio station in Uppsala in Sweden. They wanted an American voice speaking Swedish.
Right.
It was an advertisement for a happy hour for some bar. And I just used I happened to be in my studio in the U.S. then, so I did it on the 92 through the, my usual signal chain. No one complained, so I guess it worked.
How did they find you for that?
There aren't a lot of Americans who speak good Swedish here.
Right. Okay. There you go. That's interesting.
I know people who have lived here 20, 30 years who really don't speak a word of the language.
Yeah. Some creative casting though. That's casting.
Yeah, I thought it was
for
cool.
someone. Absolutely.
They actually wanted an African American speaking Swedish, and I couldn't get my head around that. And the funny thing is, I've been told that I don't sound like an American when I speak Swedish. I sound more Middle Eastern because I roll my R's. Most Americans don't even bother trying. They'll just go, "Jag pratar jättebra svenska," which means I speak very good Swedish. I'll say, "Jag pratar jättebra svenska." My R is a little farther back. Swedes do the total tongue roll. I can't do that. I have more of like a German R in the middle as opposed to the French R. I'm
Yeah.
kind of up there somewhere.
Yeah,
and
right.
apparently that's how Middle Easterners speak Swedish. So
Now, you don't just speak Swedish, because I saw you performing, singing One of Us, and then all of a sudden singing it in German.
yeah, I like to do that. I also do. We do Major Tom in German, like straight through. And the thing, One of Us is fairly easy in German because the pace of the vocal is very, very easy. Not that many words because I only do the second verse and chorus in German. But Major Tom, that was a bear. I mean, I don't need the cue cards anymore, but for a while I would actually make a shtick out of it. I'd pull the card up off the stage for the last verse. But I'm a good mimic, I do know what I'm singing in the German. My German is good enough to get my head around that. But the One of Us came about because a German band did an amazing cover. They're called Erdmöbel, which apparently means earth furniture. And
Fair enough.
and they did this wacky, genius video using promo video clips from Germany from like the 40s, 50s, and 60s. And it had mariachi horns and an accordion, and the guy sang it in this very low, droll voice. And a fan sent me a translation back into English, and I said, "Wow, this is really cool." Because the chorus, the original chorus is what if God was one of us, just a slob like one of us, just a stranger on the bus trying to make his way home. In German, it's wäre Gott einer wie wir. What if God was one of us? Eingeschlafen mit nem Bier, passed out with a beer. Nur ein Fremder 3:30, just a stranger at 3:30 in the morning. In der letzten Straßenbahn, in the last trolley car.
Oh, wow.
They are
So
very
they-
specific.
They had me passed out with a beer.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's right.
I've taken it upon myself to learn choice phrases in all sorts of languages. I do some Polish tongue twisters. I can say some nonsense sentences in Hungarian. It's just fun.
Yeah, it's very handy. Always very handy. I made a complete arse of myself in Paris. I was in a restaurant and I'd been out all afternoon drinking, and probably wasn't such a good idea to get up at the end of the meal and make a speech in French to the rest of the restaurant. And I opened the speech up by saying in French, "My name is Australian." So we're off to a flying start. I mean, they're thinking, that's a very unusual name, or this guy is an idiot. And of course, the latter was the
Je
truth.
m'appelle Australia.
Yeah, je m'appelle Australien. Yep, that's what happened. That's what happened to me. Yeah, they were horrified. So what's your preference? Is it songwriting? Is it performing? Is it sitting in the studio recording?
I really love it all. Songwriting is kind of like walking on thin ice. I always get this feeling in the pit of my stomach that that I'm going to throw up, and that's when I know something good's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's sort of a necessary evil. I never wanted to be a songwriter. All I ever really wanted to be was a guitar player. Started singing by default because when Rob and I put the Hooters together, which was going to be our last band, this was like our last shot at it because we'd had several false starts before that, and neither one of us was really a singer, and we just said, let's see how far we can get with this. So that was, singers by default. And I've always had a technical bent. I have a degree in physics.
Oh, wow.
I built ham radio gear when I was 10 years old, and always did my own repair work on my amps and guitars. So when the recording technology became available to me, I dove in, and I love writing a song. I love recording. I love getting guitar parts and sounds. But then I also love just sitting with the tracks and manipulating and diving, getting molecular with it.
What's the weirdest thing you've ever done to get a guitar sound that you wanted?
Probably just recording through a really crappy little amp.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I've been in the box now for probably 7 years. I wasn't completely sold on the plug-in thing. I had Amp Farm early on and Amplitude, but then when they came out with 11, that was the first really good AC30 emulation. And I'm a dyed-in-the-wool AC30 lover. I still have the first AC30 I ever bought in 1967, which is what I made most of those records with. But I would still, go downstairs and turn the amp on and mic it up and hope for the best. But then when I heard about the Kemper, and they sent me one to demo. And the first thing I did was, of course, profile that AC30 and my best Marshall. And really, I've never looked back since then.
Do you have any rituals in the way you work? Like that? I mean, besides the basic stuff of setting up a Pro Tools session, do you have anything that's sort of not negotiable in the way you set up a session or the way you work in general when you record?
No, it's totally slipshod.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd think by now I'd have templates, and I've made a couple of templates, and they're hidden on a hard drive somewhere. But no, I pretty much just open up a Pro Tools session, and I have gotten to the point where I will actually import a drum template from another session, whatever the last session I happened to do was.
Yeah.
No, I mean, again, when I'm working at home, I've got my signal chain. It's not hardwired, but my patch bay makes no sense at all. I can't even figure out what's where, so I pretty much just try to leave everything as is. And I've got I've got my go-to plug-in chains. I've also I'm a big fan of guitar rig.
Yep.
Just because, I mean, if I want to make a sound like my AC30, I don't use that. But I love pulling it up and just trying presets and getting sounds that I would never imaginably create for myself, and that work.
Mm. What about songwriting? Ritual? Do you have rituals there?
Not really. No, I mean, I sit down with an instrument, usually a guitar, sometimes a mandolin or a mandola or a piano, and I'll start playing, and if something pops into my head, I'll start singing. Often what happens is I'll create a little basic track, a little song structure, and then put the microphone and record and sing and see what comes out. I mean, that's how I wrote One of Us. I created the track to at the request of my then girlfriend, now wife, to show her how my Porta Studio worked. And I'd been playing that guitar riff all day, and I made a little track out of it. I had an Ensoniq EPS at the time, which I don't know if that ever made it to Australia. But
no, I don't know that.
Ensoniq, they were the first company that made sampling available to the consumer. They came out with the Mirage, which is sort of the $1,000 answer to the $8,000 emulator.
Right.
And then next generation was the ASR-10 and the EPS. They've since gone the way of all flesh. But actually, a good friend of mine wrote all the code for those instruments. So I always had their latest generation. Actually, there's some videos of Kanye working with Ensoniq samplers way back in the day. But I programmed the drums and a bass and a keyboard and recorded the guitar and tracked to 2 of the 4. And then the girlfriend/wife said, "Now sing it." And I put track 3. I put it in record and sang, and that's literally what came out.
Mm. Wow. That's what came out, One of Us.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I've been waiting a while for that to happen again.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it does happen to greater or lesser degrees. I mean, I really found that the more I can get my brain out of the equation, the more likely I am to come up with something from the heart.
Yeah. See, I work on another podcast, and we interviewed John Karabi, and we were talking to him about songwriting, and he was saying how he actually leaves the lyric writing till last. Like they'll sort of, someone will have a guitar riff or something, and that'll turn into a song, and then he'll when they're sort of halfway through that or finished that, he'll disappear into a back room and just by himself. And he loves the pressure of, okay, I've got to get a lyric out. And that's when he writes his lyric.
But now I don't know if they're writing the melody at the same time as the lyrics. In that,
yeah, I don't know. Didn't get into that.
I have my mantra is it's not a melody until it has lyrics, and it's not a lyric until it has a melody.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
They often come at the same time.
Yeah.
It's funny how things, can start. I was with a friend of mine who's a musician and a songwriter who lives down the coast here. And we go to the gym together. And I'd probably have
well, that's your first mistake.
But we are good friends. So anyway, we were. It was it was one of those morning after kind of things. Probably a few too many the night before, and it was a bit of a struggle. And he said, "Oh, how are you feeling?" I said, "Oh man, I got up on the wrong side of yesterday.
Ooh.
And he went, oh, I like that. I said, what? He said, I like that. That's really good. I went, okay. So he said, can you write something? So I quickly wrote some lyrics. Anyway, we knocked out a song within about 2 hours.
Wow, just comes. Yeah.
Which I'll send it to you. I'll send it to you, Eric.
Cool. See, that's the magic. That's what you have to do all of the other work to get.
Yes.
All the banging your head and what about this? How about that? No, and you write the chorus and then the verses, and then the chorus doesn't make sense with the verses, so you change the chorus, and then you realize you ruined the whole thing, and you start over again.
Yes. It was an interesting process for me because I've always been interested in dabbling in something. Like I want to learn to play the guitar, which I've never done, and I finally bought a guitar that's left-handed for me, so I can not struggle to play a right-handed guitar.
See, I'm left-handed. I think I have the advantage playing what's traditionally called right-handed guitar.
Ah, so you play right-handed though, don't you?
I do. I think it's left-handed because my left hand is doing all the hard work.
So are you really left-handed or are you?
I'm really left-handed. Oh yeah.
So did you flip guitars over when you were a kid, or did you just learn to play with the strings up the?
No, my right-handed uncle handed me a right-handed guitar, and I learned my first few chords on that. And then after the Beatles thing on Ed Sullivan, which was when I got serious, I played nonstop for about a week until my fingers literally, I could not touch the strings. So I actually did restring the guitar, flipped it over, and taught myself to play left-handed. And it took about 2 weeks, and I realized that I could go either way at that point. And then I just decided that it would be easier to play what is traditionally right-handed, and I think that was the right decision.
Yeah. The funny thing is, I saw an interview with Ringo Starr, and I never knew he was left-handed. And a lot of people try and copy some of his drum patterns, and they can never get. There's certain drum patterns, certain songs, and I think it could be. Is it Ticket to Ride or something? I think it's Ticket to Ride. And there's a kind of weird kind of delay going on. And he explained it. He said, I can't get my hand over the top of the other. I have to go over the top of the other hand to get to the next part of the pattern. Right. And it just has that slight delay where someone would just normally clack, they just hit the thing. He's got that sort of quarter-second delay.
Of course, now we could just quantize that.
I was going to say, there's no Pro Tools back in those days.
No, that's right.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank goodness there's Pro Tools now, because we were able to get that controversial new mix of Sgt. Pepper.
Yeah, right.
Which would not have been possible if they had not been able to go back to the source 4-track reels and separate everything back out. And I have friends who think it's the worst thing ever. Personally, if I want to hear the original, I'll listen to my mono vinyl from back in the day. But I kind of like being able to hear everything. Yeah, certainly. The original stereo, that's what I grew up listening to, so I was used to that. But hearing this, and I was very impressed that some of the choices they made, like they left the drums on the side for most of the tracks, which I thought was very respectful.
That's right. That's the way they used to pan it, didn't they? Drums one side, guitars the other side, vocals in the middle or something, yeah.
Basically everything on one side, vocals and tambourine on the other.
When I was a kid, I used to love listening to one side of those sort of mixes. It was awesome. It was sort of like your very own, listening to your very own mix of it or something.
Right,
I don't know,
right.
Bizarre.
I thought I had a problem with, it was a David Bowie album I bought, and it sounded, I heard it on the radio, bought the album, got home, put it on the turntable. I'm thinking, this is rubbish. It's not what I heard on the radio. And it wasn't until I realised that I was listening, it was in mono, and one channel was off. So it sounded like it was, coming through both speakers, or headphones, but only one channel. Yeah, that wasn't good.
Not good. David would not have approved.
No, he wouldn't have approved. Now, I've got to ask you before we wind this up, the journey with like you said before, this was the last hurrah. If this didn't work, you were kind of going to give that away. What was it like when the Hooters took off?
I wish I could experience that now as a sentient human being. Although we weren't kids then. I was 30 by the time that really happened. But it's such I guess it's a classic thing where you're so busy, you're so caught up in the moment that it's really difficult to step back and really enjoy it and say, oh my God, this is really happening. For us, it was a slow build. We, we started out literally playing 5 or 6 nights a week at biker bars outside of Philadelphia. And in the beginning, we were really a ska and reggae band. And the bikers at said bars didn't know what to make of us at first, but we won them over. And then the Jamaican Rastas started coming out to see us. So we had dreadlocked Rastas partying next to extreme bikers, and it was pretty amazing. And then we one of our first demos, actually our very first demo, somehow landed on WMMR, which was the premier rock station in the city. And they put it in regular rotation, so all of a sudden our shows became massive. Well, for the time, and we just sort of rode that wave for a couple of years. Put out a couple of singles. We could not get arrested in New York. We try to get the A&R geniuses down to Philadelphia. No, you come to New York. So we'd go from playing for 400 or 500 people in a packed club in Philadelphia to 20 people in New York, and the A&R guy says, "It wasn't electric."
Yes.
And then we took a break to do the Cindy album, and the success of that got us a little bit more cachet in the business. And then but we still weren't getting signed, so we borrowed some money and we did an indie album called Amore. We found a local studio and spent a month doing it. We sold like 150,000 of them.
Wow!
Just regionally. And then finally, we got signed. At that point, Rick Chertoff was who produced Cindy, Joan, et cetera, and he really is the 3rd or 6th Hooter, depending on how you look at it. Always been a mentor to me. He was working for Columbia at the time, so we finally got signed. We got to deal with Columbia and made Nervous Night, and we kind of knew we had something with that. We Danced was supposed to be the worldwide hit, and that was sort of the obvious first single. Then when we took the album in for mastering, we took it into George Marino, who was the absolute gold standard in mastering engineers, rest in peace. He asked us, "What's the single?" And we said, "Well, what do you think?" And he said, "Obviously, All You Zombies. It's the most commercial." And we were like,
"What?
Wow." That was the song when we were doing 4 sets a night. That would open our first set just to get it out of the way. And it's funny because then a live recording of that from like 81 ended up as our second single and got tons of airplay. So it was the little song that wouldn't go away. That was the first single, and that's the song that went number 1 in Australia.
Yep.
I read somewhere that you had another name for All You Zombies. Was it the 20-minute song or the 15-minute song or something like that? Is that right?
Oh, I don't know about that.
No?
No, that's always been All You Zombies as far as I know. There's the short version, which was the, there have been several recorded versions of that, but because on Amore, the indie record, it was like a 3.5-minute pop rock reggae song, and it was Rick Chertoff's idea to draw it out and make it into a Floydian epic.
Right.
Yeah.
And we kept, every choice we made, it was, what would Roger think? And of course, then when he came to see us at the Town and Country Club in London and said, "Hi, I'm your fan," we knew what Roger thinks. But
so he became a fan of the Hooters, Roger Waters.
He did, and we go see him whenever he's around, and he's always very nice to us.
Cool. He was here actually just recently, touring Australia.
He was, wasn't he?
Yeah.
That's quite an epic show he's got. That album has just had legs for centuries, literally.
Yeah.
But getting back to our the real breakthrough, again, Live Aid. We played in front of 120,000 people live and a billion on TV. People ask me, what was it like? I didn't know until I watched the video. We were in and out. It was, by the time we got our legs on stage, we were done. We played 2 songs. But no, it's been an interesting journey. Then the U.S. sort of tapered off, and Germany worked for us, and then later Scandinavia, and thank God for that, because Germany especially is the gift that keeps on giving to legacy artists.
Oh, good on you, Germany. Yeah.
If only Australia. That's my bucket list. I really do want to go back there and play again one day, one fine day. I know we have fans there, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's such a big revival now. The 80s, I mean, the 80s was a monster decade. I mean, probably all, you know, the record company or record selling probably started to wind up in the mid-90s. But that mid-80s to mid-90s, if you got a hit record, you sold a lot of records.
And your songs are still played on the radio and by cover bands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, really, what songs from basically 2000 on are cover bands going to be playing in 20 years?
That's a good point.
Yeah, I can't think of many.
Yeah.
You know, they'll be doing Don't Stop Believing.
I mean, the industry has changed, and now I think it's gone back to, well, it's all cyclical anyway, but it's gone back to a point where if you want to be a musician, you've got to do it because you love it, because you're not going to make any money.
That's for sure. That's
Yeah.
You know, I keep reminding my son about that, but he's determined.
Oh, okay. So how many kids have you got?
I've got 3.
And well, we know one's obviously wants to be a musician. What about the other 2?
The oldest one is a writer. She's a journalist in New York. Working for a Hearst magazine.
Yep.
My son is the middle one, and my youngest is 17 in high school here, and we'll see. She loves animals, although she has recently expressed interest in recording a 90s style rock song.
It's in the blood.
Which I would love, because she's I know I hope she's gone out now, but she really has she has this voice. She has a like really special thing going on, and I'd really love to work with that.
I was going to say, how devastated would you be if she came home one day and said, "Hey, I'm recording a song. I found this really awesome producer."
Yeah, that's right.
I'd love that. Are you kidding me? I would love that.
Yeah.
No, I mean, most of my friends here who are legacy musicians like myself, they all have grown children who are pursuing music, and they're all doing it completely independently of their parents. Their parents don't know what they're doing, and you know, there's great merit to that. I'm glad that my kids trust me and listen to me, but I'm also glad that they know when to take a step away and really do their own thing.
Well, it's funny because we're all dads, and I know Robbo, your eldest boy, is it your eldest who does voiceovers?
My second eldest, my 12-year-old, he does voiceovers. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, his mum's a voiceover artist herself, so he sort of had to step into the industry. But they both did. Yeah. My 14-year-old and my 12-year-old did for many years. The 14-year-old sort of got to that stage where his voice broke and he was sort of sounding like every other guy on the block, and so the work dropped off. But the 12-year-old's still getting those, you know, young teenager, hip and cool reads.
Are you giving him the Michael Jackson hormones to keep things where they are?
No.
Isn't that called the castrati?
they call it countertenor now.
Oh, is that right?
Countertenor.
That is actually a thing. I always thought that a countertenor was just a guy who could hit like a high D or high E, but it's in fact they're mostly actually baritones with a really great falsetto, and those are the guys who sing what were typically castrati parts in opera. Don't ask me how I know that, but
well, how do they do that?
They do it in falsetto. I was rooting around. I did this festival in Germany a couple of years ago where they play Handel, and they invite a rock musician in to do 5 of my songs with an orchestra and a band. And I said, I'll only do it if I can play some Handel. And okay, so they sent me a piece to learn on guitar, which was a struggle because my reading is pitiful at best. And then the conductor said, how would you feel about singing an aria? And I'm like, bring it on. Mm-hmm. So he sent me the piece. So I went on YouTube to hear some examples of it. And the first one was this guy, this very manly man, and he opens up his mouth, and it's like, "Ombra mai fu."
Wow!
Whoa! And it's like, man, you got to be confident of your masculinity to be able to stand up in front of an audience and sing like that.
Didn't do Jimmy Somerville any harm.
Oh, that's true. Well,
yeah.
He certainly made a thing out of it, and I have great respect for that.
Yeah. But I did hear a recording of the last castrati. There was one that actually did end up being recorded. It's
That's
probably
right.
on YouTube somewhere.
There's a film about him on Netflix. I forget his name, but yeah, he was quite the man. And apparently, they cut him after the inches of manhood had arrived, so he was actually able
Active.
to function.
Yes,
active as
he
such.
was very active from what I gather.
Yeah.
Extremely active, in fact.
He was a rock star.
He was. Gonad the Barbarian. All right. Well, we should let you get on with your day in Sweden.
Yeah.
And your
Enjoy
night
the weather.
Thank you. It's cooled off, actually. We're getting more to typical May now. This May has been insane. It's been like well into the 20s, and I think it's even hit 30.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been warm. I've got friends who live, well, apart from Robert, who you've met, I've got a family that actually moved here where I live, which is down the coast out of Melbourne. And the father and the two kids came here and spent 3 months living down here and put the kids in school. That's how we met. It was just so they get their English up to speed. And he knew Australia, but why he picked here, I'm still haven't kind of worked that out. But anyway, it was great. So we've remained in contact, and his kids are pretty well the same age as mine. So the plan is we'll head to Sweden in the next 6 to 8 months and do that on the way through before we go to the UK to see my ever-aging family.
Well, drop us a line when you do.
I shall, definitely.
We can drink some really expensive beer.
Nice.
Is there anyone you've worked with that you've gone, wow, that was fun, or you've learnt something new from, or whatever? Like, I guess the question is there a session that you remember that you've just gone, wow, that was, one of my favorites, and why?
I get that out of everything.
Yeah, right.
I have to. I have to fall in love with the artist on some level. One artist in particular was Amanda Marshall. This was after her first album, which was huge. Her A&R person reached out to me, and I was in Sweden for the summer, and said, when you coming back, would you work with her? And I don't know why I was a little bit hesitant, but she kept on me, and I finally said, okay. She said, I guarantee you're going to love her. She hadn't written much on the first album, but she's really got a lot of ideas. So I was like, okay. And we just clicked immediately, and I had a really long, productive writing relationship. I think I wrote 11 of the 12 songs on her second album and ended up producing the singles. And she was her voice was devastating. And the last vocal we recorded on that album was a song called If I Didn't Have You. And it was a rescue attempt, because we had this track that we had cut and the song just wasn't really making it. So at 10 o'clock at night, we said, let's see what we can come up with. And we worked all night tossing around ideas. And finally, at around 7 a.m, we found the chorus, wrote the verses, started recording her vocal at like 9 a.m. after having been up all night. And at the time, I was demoing the Browner VM1. And when we finished recording her vocal, I wept, because I said, this is the best vocal I'm ever going to record. And it cost me $4,000 because I had to keep the mic after that.
Hey, here's one that just occurred to me. A quick question. Talking to Ivor Davies, and AP will probably know this story too. There was an Australian band called Icehouse, and Ivor Davies was the lead singer and songwriter for the band. And he talked about a song that they did called Electric Blue, which he worked on with
John Oates.
John Oates, yeah. From
It's funny.
Paul and Oates.
A friend of mine directed the video, and another friend of mine was in the video.
Okay, well, there you go. So the interesting thing was, it's like one of their, or if not their biggest hit. I'm not sure whether it was their biggest, but it was very close to being their biggest. But Ivor Davies talks about writing it here in Sydney, in his little flat in Newtown, with John sitting around a piano one night. And the final thing John said to him as they hadn't finished the song, and as John was leaving, he said, look, you've got to release that song, because if you don't, Hall & Oates will. And Ivor took it to the band and, said, well, what do we do? And they all went, okay, well, let's finish it off and release it. And it made me think, I often wonder what John Oates thought when he saw how much of a big hit it became. And I guess the question out of that for you is there any songs that you've worked on that you thought, shit, I wish I had kept that for myself?
No.
No?
Basically, no, not really. I mean, people have asked me that about One of Us a bunch, but... when I wrote that song, I actually sang it in a voice. I was trying to sound like Brad Roberts from the Crash Test Dummies, because that's the voice I heard in my head.
I love that voice.
Yes,
in fact, I love
that voice.
Yeah.
I'll send you my demo of that, which is really kind of funny. But I sang it in that voice, and I brought it into our session with Joan the next day. We were writing her album at the time, and we took a break in the afternoon, and I said, hey, guys, I got to play you this wacky song I wrote last night. And I really didn't think that the song was going to have any life outside of being a song that I knew had stumbled on some basic truth that I hadn't known I knew until then. And the track finished, and then Rick Chertoff looked up and he said, Joan, do you think you could sing that? Which never would have occurred to me. And the way he asked it was brilliant, because if he had said, would you like to sing that? She probably would have said, no, that's not my kind of song at all. But she said, I can sing the phone book, write out the lyrics. And, we quickly recorded a guitar and vocal, and we knew that voice and that song were meant to be together. The songs I've written for other people they're all far better singers than I am. And I'd rather hear their voices singing them than me.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of songs that I've written and recorded that I wish the world would hear. I think some of my best work will never be heard. I've got like 3,000 plays on Spotify with them.
Yeah.
Well, we'd love to hear that demo. That'd be cool.
Oh, I can send you that.
Yeah.
Actually, I'll send you the Spotify link to my first solo album, The Optimist. And 30 seconds after the end of the title track, which is the last track, you get to hear my demo of Lawless.
There you go.
And just for added value, if you act now, I actually recorded the song with Brad Roberts from the Crash Test Dummies.
Did you really?
Is that right? Wow.
I did. I have a recording of that, which is absolutely epic. First, I wanted to put him on my demo, and then which he did, and then he said, do you think I could just play acoustic guitar and sing it? And I'm like, come on. And his vocal was devastating. I mean, to me, if Joan is the young girl filled with wonderment singing about the mysteries of the universe, Brad Roberts is the voice of God.
Yeah. Do you know what? If there's a song
Yeah.
of the 90s that comes to mind every time I think of it, it's Afternoons and Coffee Spoons. God, I love that song. I don't know why.
Yeah.
There's just something about it. It's such a good song.
That was when we were both living in Perth.
It was.
I don't
Yeah, that's
even know that.
No?
Afternoons?
You'd know it if you heard
Afternoon.
Yeah.
Crash Test Dummies.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
We played that.
that-
It was like because the radio station that Robbo and I worked at in Perth we were playing all sorts of really cool stuff.
Yeah.
That no one else actually touched, and that was one of them.
Were you weren't living in Perth when we did that interview, were you?
No, I was actually living in Adelaide, and then flew across to Melbourne for the interview.
Because I remember I interviewed with a very nice young man from Perth, but I think that was in Melbourne actually.
Yeah, I was there. I think we all flew in for that.
Yeah, considering that we were there for 4 days, did not sleep at all. How many people we met? I'm amazed at how much I remember.
God knows what that shirt was I was wearing in the photograph, but anyway, we should put that up in the show notes just for the hell of it.
You know what? We all get the 80s pass for that stuff. I mean, I look at my hair. I look at my hair, what I was wearing. God, what was I thinking? I know what I was thinking. I was thinking, why do I have my hair like this, and why am I dressed like this?
Yeah.
No,
I knew better.
I was thinking, wow, this looks really good. And I was looking at my hair in that photograph. It looks like I'm wearing a Busby.
Yeah. I mean, I've shown up next to Bono on a mullet, Epic Mullets website.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. He had that classic mullet, didn't he?
That was a shocker.
clown.
Yeah.
Just
the
a
ultimate
clown.
shocker. That was a Frankston. We would call that a Frankston in Melbourne.
Frankston. In Sweden.
I know
in
where you're
Sweden, they
talking
call
about.
I have no idea what you're talking about, but that's fine. In Sweden, they call it a hockeyfrill.
A hockey frill.
Hockeyfrill.
It sounds better than mullet.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds pretty romantic, doesn't it?
It sounds cool. I want one.
Well, everything in Swedish is very accurate and descriptive. It literally means a hockey haircut.
Really?
There
you go.
Yeah, like the Swedish word for brassiere is BH, which is an abbreviation for brösthållare, a breast holder.
Right. In Aussie slang,
Very.
it's an over-the-shoulder boulder holder.
And speaking of
There
such
you
things,
go.
you do know what Hooters means in Australia, don't you?
Yes.
You can. I assume it means breast.
Yeah.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. Well, this brings us to a whole other subject, which is the name of the band. Hooters did not mean breasts when we named the band the Hooters.
Okay. Because that's the obvious question that I'd sort of stayed away from.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. I mean, the melodica, the signature sound that begins
Yeah.
and we danced. we got that early on because Augustus Pablo, a reggae legend, was using it, and we thought it would sound cool on some of our stuff. And I had a friend who had one, so we borrowed it and brought it into our very first demo session. And the engineer said, "Give me a level on that Hooter." So Rob and I looked at each other and said, "Yeah, this is a Hooter." And we still hadn't named the band, and we wanted a plural noun that wasn't a household object, so that everyone in the band could say, "I am not a tree or a chair or a frog, but a beetle, a rolling stone, a whaler." So it took 24 hours before one of us realized, hey, we're the Hooters.
Nice.
And it was 6 months later that Steve Martin did that bit on Saturday Night Live where he gets up and he says, "I believe that da-da-da and da-da-da, and the sanctity of marriage, and that all children should be in small animals. And furthermore, I believe that a woman's breast should never be known as tits, jugs, giant Winnebagos, party bags, on and on. From now on, they shall only be known as Hooters."
Whoops.
Oh, dear.
So we thought it was funny at the time.
Yeah.
Just a few boobs making music.
Yeah,
That's us. That's still us.
This is my Russian keyboard player, Mr. Nipolov.
Love. And drummer Kachakakov.
The interview can't get any better than that now. That's the quote of the day.
Actually, it's Ivan Kachakakov.
Yeah. And Nora Nipolov, his wife.
Oh, that's good. His wife, yeah.
Yeah. All right.
That was worthwhile.
Beautiful.
I hope so. That was a very delightful way to spend part of an afternoon before I go back to the A minor violin sonata on mandolin.
Are you recording this afternoon?
No, I'm learning it. I practice this thing. Several hours a day for no good reason. I thought about recording it, but Chris Thiele already did like the definitive version. I'm never going to play it as well as him. But I just got myself from this music store. They've had 2 beautiful vintage Fender electric mandolins hanging on the wall. And I've always sort of looked askance at them because they only have 4 strings. But I pulled one of them off the wall one day and plugged it into an amp on stun and started playing the presto movement of the G minor. And I realized, wow, I'm Yngwie Malmsteen on the mandolin. So I'm actually going to record these all like hard rock style just because.
You can.
Because I can.
Because you can. Of course. Why not?
Absolutely.
Got to keep the challenge. Got to keep it fresh, even if keeping it fresh means going back a few centuries.
Indeed. Nothing wrong with that. Well, there you go. That's Eric Bazilian from Stockholm with his studio downstairs and a nice little setup too.
Do you know what I love about that? I love the language. I love the conversation went along the lines of not, "Joan, can you sing that?" but "Do you think you can sing that?" I think that's great.
Yes. Yeah.
Of course I can fucking sing it. Give me the backing track. Let's go.
Yeah, let's go.
Is that producer speak?
That was producer speak.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was when he was trying to get her to sing it. He didn't say, you didn't ask her, "Will you sing it?" He said, "Can you sing it?"
Yeah.
Her answer was basically, "Of course I can."
But I like the fact what a guy. He does everything. He plays everything, like guitar, saxophone, keyboards. He sings. He's a songwriter. He can produce, engineer, and he's a gear nut. What a package.
Totally.
Yeah, absolutely.
What a package. Now, did you ever used to go and see, you're probably a bit young actually, George, but they come from your town, didn't they?
I do have to say I was a bit young to really kind of follow the band, but they were hitting it when I was in grade school, I believe. And I remember they played at like this big show locally in a nearby town, and it was a big deal, and everybody made a big deal out of it. And I never did see them live actually, but they were the local boys make big, make it to the big time at that time,
Yeah. Well, you had only been 10 or something.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it was their number 1 hit in Australia. So, and the two shows here, the one I saw in Melbourne was sensational. They went off, lifted the roof.
That's fantastic.
Anyway, that's our show for this week. In a couple of weeks, we'll be back and we're going to talk about something we've been mulling around for a while, and that's delivery systems, how you get your files to your client. What's your preferred way of doing it? we'll have a chat about that on our next show. In the meantime,
We've got a bit of an exclusive to play us out this week, though.
we do have an exclusive. It came to us via FedEx. Thank you. This is a version that Eric has kindly said we can play on the show. It's a version of One of Us, the Joan Osborne hit. But this is Brad Roberts, who's the singer of a band called Crash Test Dummies. He's certainly got a unique voice. And this was recorded as a demo. And it's funny, I've played this in my studio using proper monitors. And if you, by chance, can play this through a decent set of monitors in your studio, do it, because it sounds unbelievable. This is One of Us with Eric Bazilian and Brad Roberts.
If God had a name, what would it be, and would you call it to his face? If you were faced with him in all his glory, what would you ask if you had just one question? Yeah, God is great. Yeah, God is good. Yeah. What if God was one of us? Just a slob like one of us. Just a stranger on the bus trying to make his way home. If God had a face, what would it look like, and would you want to see? If seeing him meant that you would have to believe in things like heaven and in Jesus and the saints and all the prophets. Yeah, God is great. Yeah, God is good. Yeah. What if God was one of us? Just a slob like one of us. Just a stranger on the bus trying to make his way home. God was one of us, just a slob like one of us, just a stranger on the bus trying to make his way home, trying to make his way home, just like a holy rolling stone. Back up to heaven all alone. Nobody's calling on the phone, except for the Pope and maybe Rome.
Goodbye, wipe the tear, baby, from your eye. Though it's hard to part, I know I'll be tickled to death to go. Don't cry, don't sigh, there's a silver lining in the sky. Bonsoir, old thing, cheerio, chin chin, na poo toodaloo, goodbye.